If you're having a bad day, he can really raise you back up, you know?
A 50-year friendship that inspired a hit movie.
Individual.
We're on up here. I don't know if we popped a breaker. Yeah. Check 1, 2. That's working. Try the video.
If you're having a bad day, he can really raise you back up, you know?
A 50-year friendship that inspired a hit movie.
Individuals got a special need. You know, they're just like you and I. They should be treated with respect.
Meet the Real Radio, played by actor Cuba Gooding Jr., plus a deadly diagnosis.
How do I tell my little boy Daddy's not coming home?
See what brought one missionary back from the dead, all on today's 700 Club Interactive. Well, welcome to the show.
Okay, we got that figured out. Good morning. Having a little technical difficulties, but we're all clear now. And it's still only 11:04, so that's not too bad. Tony, I'm probably a little hot. Yep, you got it. I mean, I'm probably a lot hot, but it just depends on your preference. All right, let me fire a few Labor Day jokes at you. They're not good. I'd let you know right now, they're not good. If today is Labor Day, how many babies were born? I told you they're awful. Labor Day is a glorious holiday because your child will be going back to school the next day. It would have been called Independence Day, but that name was already taken. That's good, yeah. Did you hear about the Labor Day joke? Doesn't. No, I'm close, but it doesn't work for me either. These are bad. Whew. Why are zombies free labor? They don't need a living wage. These are awful. That's like one of the worst groups. I can't even enjoy like how bad they are. They're beyond that. Wow. I should. Yes. What do nuclear plants in England serve their workers for Labor Day party? Fission chips. Oh, that's awful, awful, awful. On that note, I want to welcome a very special guest here today. There's a few of you who know who she is, but most of you don't. So this goes back a ways, but Joanne, will you come up here just for a quick second? I want to explain something. First of all, hi.
Yeah, so good to see you.
So Joanne, along with her husband Jim, are the ones that planted this church. Yep. And really, it was them. I can't even. They took a chance on a punk kid, much like I've been taking a chance on Tony. Same kind of thing. But I love these guys. This church would not be here today if it weren't for Jim and Joanne. That's the truth. So.
And you guys are doing such a great job. We are so glad that we had you to pick.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah, I came here January 1996. I've almost been here long enough to be considered a local, but not quite there yet. But yeah, January, and they planted the church in 1991. Jim and Joanne did, and I came here fresh out of Bible school, and they gave me a shot and allowed me to come up and start working with youth and music. And to know Jim and Joanne is just, they were so special, so loving, so encouraging. I can't even describe how encouraging they were. And just risk takers. I think that's why I liked it here so much. Jim was always, more or less, he said yes to stuff. And I love that about him. He would always try to find a way. Yeah, let's try it. Who knows? Let's see, let's try it. And I always loved that about him. It was always encouraging because, I had a lot of failing moments in those days. And Jim was just so quick to pick you up and say, that's okay. What was God teaching you through that? He said that a few times. I wanted to smack him, but he was really good. So what's the Lord trying to teach you? He used to say that all the time, and he was right. But it was so encouraging having those guys. We're so fortunate that they invested so heavily into Julie and I when we were young and doing this. And it was really, Jim was a big part of when he was getting ready to go plant another church. He approached me and they talked to us, and he said, we think you're the next guy. And that was tough because I wasn't in the market to be the next guy. It just wasn't what I was shooting for. I had been close enough to Jim and watched the things that he went through. I remember thinking, you gotta be nuts to want to be a pastor. That's a rough role, man. There are certain things about it that are really tough, and any leadership really, but now Jim was just so encouraging. I remember telling Jim, I remember it so clearly, telling him, like, Jim, Pastor Jim, I'm not a reverend. I can't do this. I'm like, it won't work. I'll last 6 months before they figure me out, And I had all these deep-rooted fears, and he would just smile and say, nobody's asking you to be something you're not. You need to be you and do what you do. But he was like, and then he told me, I know that I know God's said you're the next guy. So that was pretty cool, and I'll never forget that. And just over the years, so encouraging, uplifting, and I got to tell you, last thing about this, but it's so much easier being the second guy. And you could tell Jim I said that, but it is true. It is so much easier after all the hard work's been done. Church planting is, I think, one of the most difficult things to do. It is not easy at all. It's very difficult. And to be able to come along years later after all the hard work was done and a foundation was established, it just put me in a spot way ahead of the game, when we were able to take over and do our thing. And I just love that about Jim. and that they did the tough work. And I would say for years, I ain't planting no churches. I watched too much of that. That is difficult work. Very hard. So I appreciate those guys. I could go on and on. I better stop or I'll talk the whole sermon about it, but it was such a big deal. That community center over there, that was actually their vision. That's the true story. There used to be a sign out there that said Crossroads, I think, right? Yep, Crossroads Community Center. We changed the name, big deal. But that was even before I got here, they had that vision of a community center and feeding people and clothing people and doing all that. So I just kind of laughed because it was through their prayers and their faith back then. They just saw what wasn't even here yet and proclaimed it to be and just walked it out in faith. And now today, food pantry, the clothing shed, the after school programs and the whole community center, all that stuff. That's the fruition. Even a gym, which if you haven't checked that out, you got to pop in there. But we talked forever about wanting to have a gym out there and all that stuff's here now. And I don't take credit for it. It was just, they were praying and faithful about it. And we came in and just picked up the torch. That's all it was. They handed it off. So cool. Alrighty, I'll stop. But it's awesome to see you. So today I was thinking about Labor Day, and I was going to do just a classic Labor Day kind of sermon and talk about that. But then my thoughts kept clicking to different things. And I went from, laboring for the Lord, do everything as unto God. I had all these scriptures I'm looking at and kind of going through. And sometimes when you're preparing a message, you're just praying. You're asking God, where are we going with this, God? What's the leading here? Where do we want to go with this? And it was pretty wild. It took me a bit to get where I was thinking about laboring for the Lord. And that kept going through my head, laboring for the Lord, laboring for the Lord. And then the light bulb moment for me hit. And it was this. I thought of the Good Samaritan. And we're going to talk about this story, and I'm going to tell you why. So often, when we talk about serving God or laboring for the Lord or doing ministry or any of those types of things, we talk about those things. But we tend to think of grandiose ideas, right? We tend to think of, like, it's got to be a big ministry. It's got to be a big to-do. It's got to be that other people do that stuff. And of course, I'm a very much an everyday life kind of guy. And so my thought was, everybody gets to participate. Christianity is not a spectator sport. There's no bench in Christianity. There's no bench warmers in Christianity. Everybody gets to play. And sometimes we discount ourselves. Thank you so much. Could you hear me dying up here? So often we discount ourselves. We're happy to sit on the bench. And we shouldn't be like that. We're not meant to sit on the bench when it comes to Christianity. But at the same time, if we're talking baseball analogies, Aaron Judge is Aaron Judge. You don't have to be Aaron Judge. Let it go. Stop thinking you have to be that level to get and do anything. It's just not true. We talk ourselves out of it all the time. So I'm going to show you a great example in this passage here. I'm going to read it to you, the story. Then Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves who stripped him of all clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal. He brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. And he said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to him? Who fell among the thieves? And he said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. That message stands today. Jesus is saying the same thing today to us. Now, there's so much about this story that I love. First of all, let's talk about 3 attitudes we see toward others. So typical then, typical today. Nothing's changed. The first attitude I think we see is the leave me out of it. I don't want to be involved. Keep me out of it. There was a man, right? The first guy, he sees him half dead and he just goes past him. We call that bystander apathy. And it's a real thing. What people tend to do is think somebody else will do it. Somebody else will stop. Somebody else will help. And if you go to my wonderful cartoon, couple ahead there, I love this. The third guy, that poor guy, someone should do something. Yeah. The third guy, what's he do? Pulls out a cell phone. Unfortunately, that's our society right now. Like, pull out a cell phone, and that's what we're going to do to help somebody. Pretty sad. I was watching a video yesterday on YouTube as I was working through this, and they did a social experiment. They took a guy who was like homeless, and they had him walk out in a busy intersection and fall to his knees coughing and then fall down and act like he was dying. And they watched to see how many people stopped and helped. Then they did it with a guy dressed in a business suit, had him go out, cough, do the same actions. It was the same guy, just dressed him up, and fell. Nobody stopped to help the homeless guy. The guy in the business suit had several people stop and offer assistance. What does that say? Interesting. Next, we have the rubberneckers, which I call them. The single most irritating breed of human that I know, especially when I'm traveling. Have you ever got caught in a huge traffic line and it slows down? It takes forever and ever and ever. And then you get up to it, and it's like a stupid car off the side of the road with lights. And I'm always like, these people never seen like flashy lights before? Like, why does everybody got to slow down and gawk at it? Just keep moving. Like, you just cost me like a half an hour because you got to look at lights or a car on the side of the road. Now, I did see a clip the other day. I almost pulled it up, but I didn't because I think there's some bad language in it. But a guy has his truck off the side of the road, and he's like clearly had a wreck. And some guy slows down, stops. He goes, "Hey, you can't park there." And then drove off. And I immediately thought of Tony. I'm like, that's something Tony would do. You'd be off the side of the road. He'd put, "Hey, you can't park there." And I was like, oh, that's really funny. But I think the guy cusses him out, so I can't show the clip. But rubberneckers. In the same way, a Levite also came there, went over and looked at the man, and then walked on by the other side. And unfortunately, we got a lot of rubberneckers. People who just got to see the carnage. Gotta look, even though it's going to slow everybody down behind them. But then there's the third group, and the third group is what Jesus wants us to be like, and that's the heroes. But a Samaritan who was traveling that way came upon the man, and when he saw him, his heart was filled with pity or compassion, depending on the verse. One thing that's of interest, this was crossing cultural and racial divide as well. The Samaritan and the Levite, they would not have gotten along. That would not have been they would just avoid each other. But that's the guy who actually stops. It's pretty interesting. Think in your mind an African American with a Ku Klux Klan guy laying in a ditch. And the African American guy is the guy who actually stops. That's what was going on there in that scenario. Pretty interesting, just to give you a thing. So I got this thing, there's a superhero inside all of us. We just need the courage to put on the cape. But it's there. It's there. You can do it. You don't have to be Aaron Judge. You don't have to be Billy Graham. You don't have to be what you're not. It's just not necessary. So, a few things that we can see from this. One, practical application. Well, let me just start in. Start seeing the needs of people around me. Be aware. Pay attention. See what's going on. See what the Lord has allowed you to come across in your path. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. It's having compassion. It's slowing down. It's recognizing people are hurting. In Corinthians, Paul tells us, look out for the good of others. Galatians, the person who plants selfishness, ignoring the needs of others, harvests a crop of weeds, and all he'll have to show for his life is weeds. That sounds pretty depressing. Number 2, empathize with people's pain. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. It's just some people use those words interchangeably, but they actually are very different. To sympathize with somebody means that you've actually gone through it. So if somebody had a broken leg and you're like, oh man, I broke my leg 5 years ago. I know what that feels like. That's rough. But if you ran into somebody with a broken leg and you never broke your leg, you could then empathize with them. You could imagine what it might be like. So I like the word empathy here. You don't necessarily have to have gone through what they've gone through, but certainly you could imagine. You could figure it out, right? When he saw him, his heart was filled. I don't like the word pity, but it was really compassion, I think is a much better word for that. Share each other's troubles and problems, and in this way obey the law of Christ. 2 Corinthians, God comforts and strengthens us in our hardships and trials, so that when others are troubled, needing our sympathy and encouragement, we can pass on to them this same help and comfort God has given me. God wastes no pain. I will promise you this, whatever the largest pain that you've gone through in your life can also become like one of the greatest anointing in your life. Anointed just means set apart to do something, right? And so the largest pain you've been through can be your hugest way to minister to other people. Because you can sympathize. You can go past empathy and you can sympathize. And you can share with them how you traveled, how you got through this, how the Lord was with you, and how you were able to make sense of it and move through life. Don't be afraid to share that with people. It's huge. It's powerful. If you keep it to yourself, then you're wasting that pain that you went through. Use it. Use it to help people. Number 3, seize the moment to be kind. Seize it. Grab onto it. Kneeling beside him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with medicine and bandaged them. So he saw the opportunity, he stopped, and he decided he was going to do something about it. Never walk away from someone who deserves help. Your hand is God's hand for that person. Never tell your neighbors to wait until tomorrow if you can help them now. Always treat others as you would like them to treat you. Pretty interesting. Number 4, it's going to cost you something. Anything worthwhile does. Not always money. I think often the real challenge is your time. I'm convinced time is way more valuable than money. Right? You can always go get more money, but you can't get more time. I think time is our biggest commodity in life. And I do think we're going to be held accountable to how we use our time. I think that's fair. God's going to ask you, what'd you do with what I gave you? The biggest thing I gave you was life. What'd you do with that time? What'd you do with that time on earth? How'd you spend it? Where'd you invest it? What'd you do with it? Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 pieces of silver and told him to take care of the man. If his bill runs higher than that, he said, I'll pay the difference there the next time I am here. That's pretty cool. So let me read the 2 scriptures, and I'm going to break this down a little bit for you. If you feed the hungry and take care of the needs of those who are troubled, then your light will shine in the dark. The Lord will always lead you, and he'll satisfy your needs in dry lands. You'll be like a spring that never runs dry. Your own soul is nourished when you are kind. And finally, whenever we have the opportunity to help anyone, we should do it. But we should give special attention to those who are the family of believers. And that's very true. Now, let me connect this for you in life. It's not a hard concept. When you read the scriptures and we read this story, there's one line in there that I love. It says, as he happened to be going down that path. Our mission here is loving God, loving people, and making disciples as we go. What that as we go part means is as you go about life, as you journey about life, as you're just headed down every path you head down, wherever it takes you. And so what God is asking you to do is to react to what's in your path. You know how many great causes there are out there? A zillion. You know how many missionaries want to connect and have us support them. There's a billion, not a billion, but there's quite a few missionaries out there that are worthy for us to support them. We can't take on every cause. And you can't, as an individual, take on every cause, take on everything that's out there. That's just not realistic. What God is asking you to take care of is what's in your path, what you come upon. And you see it and you notice it, and then God is saying, allow your life to be interrupted. You don't think that guy was on a journey? He was headed somewhere. He was going somewhere. He allows his life to be interrupted to stop and help this guy. And then he pulls money out of his pocket, puts him on his donkey. He has to travel to somewhere he wasn't headed, and he sets it up. Now he's even got to return to that place to make sure the bill is squared. He's allowing his time so that he can help this guy in need. More than his money, it's his time. And so I think that's often the challenge. But here's the thing. You don't have to run around facing every cause you see out there. React to what's in front of you, to what's on your path. Now, I will tell you this too, because I run into this sometimes. The Good Samaritan spent his money, spent his time. He responded to it. Now, people mean well, but I will tell you as a church, I often get people who will have something come across their path, and then they turn to us and want us to do it. I very often will turn that back around and say, I think God put that in your path. How can I help you? Maybe, but that's your thing. That's your burden. God's not asking you to see something, grab it, and then throw it at the church or throw it to somebody else to do it. He allowed you to run across that in your path. He's asking you to do something. So often we think that something is to get everybody else to do something. Not the case. God's asking you to do something. Allow your life to be interrupted. Allow your time to be interrupted, and maybe pull out of your pocket. If it's something that you've noticed, trust me, you're doing a good job. You're going about the path of life, and you see a need, and then God's not asking you to do something that you can't do. Right? I run into somebody, we need $8,000 to pay our water bill. It's expensive here in Dansville. I don't have $8,000, But what can I do? What do I have? And we'll work with that, right? And we'll try. So you can't get overwhelmed by those things. And it's not always money. It's just not. So often it's slowing your life down to be interrupted so where you can spend some time with somebody, connect with somebody. I had a guy, and I am extremely task-oriented. Like if you don't know me, or if you've spent any time with me, I'm always have this running to-do list. It never stops. I'm always thinking about stuff I got to get done, And I get great satisfaction in checking those off. If my task-oriented people know what I'm talking about. It's just a wiring, right? And so for me, a lot of times, I feel that cost when I allow my day to be interrupted, when I push my tasks aside and I'm going to do this now. It's just me, how I'm wired, but I feel that. Because if I put those tasks off, that means to me that I'm still going to have to do them. I'm just going to have to do them later at another time. And I remember we had run into an individual here one time who was suicidal and really struggling. And I felt the Lord tap my shoulder and say, you need to get involved. This is coming to your path and I want you to do something. And I was like, okay. I knew it was God. So it was easy to do, but it was like I had a joy in doing it. I hate running errands. I hate it. Like I have a limit of like 1.5 stores per trip. That's it. And man, I'll go with Julie and Bailey, and we're going to stop here, and we're going to stop there, and we're going to stop there. After a while, man, I'm just like, you're not going in? No. I don't need anything. And I'll literally just sit out in the car, get on my phone. And because I hate the in and out, and run here and run there. I don't know what it is. It just drives me nuts. And so This person needed a lot of help getting them to no transportation, and they had a zillion different appointments they had to get to all over the place. And it was the weirdest thing. I just had a grace for it. And I took this individual all over God's green earth, man. Like crazy interruptions amount of that. But it was weird. Like every time there was a need, I didn't feel annoyed. I didn't feel like, oh, I gotta do that. It was weird. I don't even know how to explain it to you. But it was like I had a joy in doing it. Something I hate doing. I had joy in doing it. I was thrilled to do this. I share that, not to, brag on the stuff I do. It doesn't matter what I do, but it matters what you do. And I share that to tell you, that's a simple thing that I did there, but that was God's hand to that person for that time. Very real help in a time of need. And that person, by the way, today is doing fantastic, doing very well. And that's so cool that I got to just partner with God and be a part of that, just a little part of that. And so think about that. Now I'm going to show a video here because it's my favorite movie, but it's just a clip of it. And he did since pass away, which is sad. But there's a guy named, his nickname was Radio. If you've not seen that movie, first of all, shame on you. It's the greatest movie ever made. It is my favorite. I have a DVD of it at home. That and Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Those are my two favorite videos. I'm not kidding. But Radio was this gentleman who back in the late 60s he was mentally challenged and was shy and skittish, but he always, literally, this is a true story, he always had a radio with him, a little transistor radio with him. So that's how he got the nickname Radio. And a football coach kept seeing him hanging out by the gates, just hanging out there and watching. And he'd try to go over to engage him, and he was scared, and he'd move away, this, that. And little by little, he develops a bit of a friendship with Radio. And he finally coaxes him in by buying him a burger and a Coke. It's really funny, because that's what got him. Ends up more or less adopting this kid, and just brings him along and has him help him out. And the team adopts him, and the whole school adopts him. And the coach got him enrolled in the school as a junior, 11th grade. He'd been a junior for like 25 years. He refused to move up, and every time they would do the senior class picture, he would refuse to get into it because he knew that if you were in that picture, you wouldn't be around next year. He made that connection. But this coach did something simple. He allowed his routine, he allowed his life to be interrupted to bring the kingdom of God forward as it is in heaven as it is on earth, kind of thing. And it was the most beautiful thing. So your assignment this week, if you've not seen that movie, is go find it and watch it. Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Radio, and he just knocks it out of the park. It's a beautiful movie. It's the only movie I think I've ever cried at. I'm not kidding you. I don't cry at movies and stuff like that. Like half the time I see people crying in a movie, I'm like, it's a movie, right? Why are you letting it affect you? It's weird. But I literally, at the end, I don't know what it is, at the very end of the movie, the real Radio, they go to a clip where the real Radio runs out on the football. I'm like, oh, God, I need some water. I'm like, I can't help it. I just start bawling. I don't know what it is. It really hits me. So watch Radio and you'll see. But the point is, it's just everyday life. And the coach is a Christian, but it's everyday life. He allowed his life to be interrupted because that's what came into his path. As he was happening upon life, as he was going, this is what he runs into. Let's watch a clip. You get a better idea of Radio. It's pretty cool.
If you're having a bad day, he can really raise you back up,
A 50-year friendship that inspired a hit movie.
Individuals got a special need. They're just like you and I. They should be treated with respect.
Meet the real Radio, played by actor Cuba Gooding Jr., plus a deadly diagnosis.
How do I tell my little boy Daddy's not coming home?
See what brought one missionary back from the dead, all on today's 700 Club Interactive. Well, welcome to the show. James Robert Kennedy is 72 years old, and he's been a junior at T.L. Hanna High School since 1970.
James is also a permanent member of the Yellow Jackets football team and the inspiration behind actor Cuba Gooding Jr.'s role in the movie Radio. Take a look.
Meet Radio. He's a bit of a legend here in the small town of Anderson, South Carolina. At 72 years old, he's still in the 11th grade, and he wouldn't have it any other way.
Every year they take a group picture in the gym of all the seniors that's graduating that year. He will not get in that group. He said he knows he would have to leave.
Not only is Radio a student at T.L. Hanna High School, he's perhaps the most revered member of its football team, the Yellow Jackets, even though he's never played a second of football.
I think it was just God's plan that put Radio right down there on that practice field.
It was 1964, in the heat of August, when JV coaches Harold Jones and Dennis Patterson noticed a young man coming to the practices every day holding a transistor radio to his ear.
He started mimicking us, coaches and the players. And so we was trying to get him to come closer to us. We wanted him to get involved. So we said, well, let's get off him a Coke, maybe, and a hamburger. And maybe we can get him. And that was the trick.
They learned he was 18-year-old James Robert Kennedy, nicknamed Radio because of his obsession with radios. In today's terms, he was born with an intellectual disability and was unable to learn how to read or write and could barely speak. But the coaches and players saw past that and soon made him one of their own.
He wanted to be like the coaches and all. I was a defensive coach, so I'd give the sign, and he'd do the same thing. And then every once in a while, if I, got mad at an official, he'd get mad at an official.
Radio would become a permanent member of the team, going to practices, giving pep talks, and leading them onto the field before games.
Radio really loved those guys out there, and the coaches. He'd do wind sprints, and, they loved it. He just grew a part of them.
He came from a rough neighborhood across town and lived with his mom, stepdad, and younger brother, who was also intellectually disabled. Radio loved going into town, perhaps to escape the ridicule and bullying from kids in his own neighborhood.
Their mother, she'd worked 2 jobs. She worked in the hospital, and then she did housework. And her biggest concern was, these 2 boys, keep them out of the institution. Well, I told her, we'll take care of Radio while he's at the school and everything. Don't worry about it.
So in 1970, the coaches arranged for the 24-year-old to enroll in Hanna High School as a junior. Radio was ecstatic.
I think that saved his life, being able to be out here at Hanna. He was learning all the time.
But the community at Hanna High School would soon realize that what they got from Radio was more than what they were doing for him.
He loves to give hugs. If you're having a bad day, he can really raise you back up, He's just part of our family. Like you say, I think the good Lord caused on that.
This wasn't the first time Coach Jones reached out to someone who needed friendship.
I had something in my heart for people like that. There was a kid about my age who lived across the street from him. A lot of people would pick on him, so I kind of defended him, and he was my friend. I just think it was the right thing to do.
In 1996, Sports Illustrated writer Gary Smith penned an article about the friendship between Coach Jones and Radio. From there, Hollywood director Michael Tolan brought their story to the silver screen in the movie Radio.
When I'm answering an email, I always put down, if it's a student, I say, well, please find a student that has special need in your school and become their friend. Individuals got a special need, they're just like you and I. They should be treated with respect and everything like we want to be respected.
When Coach Jones retired in 1999, his biggest concern was whether his successor, Terry Honeycutt, and others would take care of his dear friend. He didn't have to worry long.
They stepped up to the plate, each one. They love him. They want to be part of him. They just, radio's a radio. He's a man.
One nation, under God.
Today, that friendship continues. And at Hanna High School, you will still find that same 11th grader greeting everyone with a smile and a hug and cheering on his beloved Yellow Jackets. From radio, a young man who couldn't learn how to read, write, or even play a sport, comes a lesson we all need to remember.
People with special needs, they give us more love than we can actually return.
Pretty cool story, I'll tell you. But what I love about it, the guy was just going about his life. But he saw something in his path, and he did something about it. That's the challenge for us today. As we go out here, Labor Day, labor for the Lord. Again, don't make it bigger and impossible. It's not. You're not being asked to do something you can't do. You're being asked to be responsive to what's in your path. Pastor Derek, will you come close us in prayer?